Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon at the AGM of the Royal Society of Queensland. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we are meeting today, the land of the Jagera and Turrbal people, and I acknowledge their enduring contribution to knowledge, as well as our culture. We're very pleased today to have two young researchers join us today to give us some presentations. So I'd now like to call on Zijun Li. Zijun is assessing the impact of our healthcare system and costs due to bushfire-related very small particles in the air, an increasing problem if bushfires continue to increase. This knowledge can help inform targeted policies and mitigate the adverse effects of the particles. Zijun is a postdoctoral research fellow at the School of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences at QUT. Please welcome Zijun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for the financial support from the Royal Society of Queensland. And my current research is on in general is atmospheric chemistry and physics, and we also look into air quality, and also I have also my main work is not doing bushfire, it's in Great Barrier Reef. We can talk about it later. And today I'm going to really happy to share my work in the field of bushfire. Here, what I'm going to show today is just a subset of what we are doing. We also get financial support to run of a C grant from QUT, and then we close collaborate with Department of Environment of DESI. Otherwise, we won't have the air quality data to work with our project. And here I would like to talk about a little bit about the project design here. The data we collect, we use the, I'm not going to talk too much about the bushfire. As we know, the climate is changing, it's becoming warmer, and then we have more frequent, more intense fire. In fact, I talked to this presentation I have shared with a couple of stakeholders a few weeks ago with Bushfire Heritage, Queensland Fire Department, and Natural Hazard Research Australia. And afterward, they all are giving me feedback. I'm not surprised what you showed today. Literally every single day, Australia is burning. Yeah. So, okay, go back to this project here. For the data, we use the bushfire hotspot data provided by the Digital Earth from Australia, and then we collect the data from the satellite from the MODIS. And we use the daily PM2.5 levels with hourly resolution per hour from the DESI. And we also use the healthcare record from the Medicare, Medicare. We have applied for the data, still waiting for that one. So we can't go into too much about the data for the cost. And how we define bushfire influence. We are not going to talk about the bushfire you only see in the landscape. We are talking about the transported bushfire. Imagine there's bushfire burning somewhere, it transported to Brisbane, and the air will be breathed. So there is a schematic diagram showing on here. Let's see for the cursor. So imagine here is Brisbane, where we are, and there's many bushfire nearby in the landscape. And for the air we receive it is from either from east, west, or south, or north. And the dashed line here represent where the air from. So if the air comes from this directory, it intersect with a couple of bushfire, and then you also see a couple of bushfire highlighted in gray. They're not intersected with the air masses. The air masses we receive it here. So this is how we define the bushfire. We will talk about more later on how we use. It's based on data, it's based on machine learning, based on a lot of data set. And the final outcome for this project, what we want to do, and hopefully we will get the health data from the Medicare after after 1 or 2 months. So what we want to do is we want to quantify what is the daily exposure of bushfire PM 2.5. And in addition to the normal small particle, the PM 2.5, we breathe in the air. They might be from the traffic, they might be from the industrial activity, our human normal activity. And what we want to link is we want to see the impact on the healthcare outcome. We only look into the primary healthcare outcome. For the hospital data, we do have collaborator from QUT as well, but that is independent from the primary healthcare system. And we want to see what's the impact for the visit to healthcare providers that include GP, also specialists, cardiovascular, respiratory, and mental health. And we just want to calculate the cost, the cost for the primary healthcare system. What we are not counting is the cost for the medication that is in another system in the PBS. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about how we define the bushfire and what is the impact on the air quality within the last. I think we have more data set in the last 20 years. So for our study area, we cover, we collect the data, air quality data. So we collect the data from the air quality monitoring data, monitoring air quality site, managed by the DESI. They are from 3 regions, Southeast Queensland, Gladstone, and then 3 other stations. We have the data covered from 2008 to 2023. And the common air pollutant that monitor is 5 particulate matter, PM 2.5, and then ozone and nitrogen dioxide. Okay, so how we define the bushfire influence? So we have the data, the data from the satellite, it identified the hotspot for the bushfire. We have the daily PM 2.5 data we get from the air quality network. And we run the air, as I said, imagine here is Brisbane or any set. And we run the air mass back trajectory with a model. We can back calculate where are the air from within the last 3 days for every hour. And then based on this trajectory, we count how many interception between the bushfire and the air masses. So here, for example, here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then for other 5, they're not included because they don't intersect with the air masses. We receive it. And then we try to do correlation with the PM 2.5 concentration at the study location. Why we need to do that? For example, if there is only 1 intersection within the past few days, during the air masses transportation, you have a lot of clean air diluted, so the air is still really clean. But if there is many intersection with your air masses, your PM 2.5 goes up, your air is contaminated by the bushfire emission. So we try to do a statistical analysis, and we try to have different threshold. Let's say if 1 interception, what is R squared between the PM 2.5 concentration and number of interception? We try to run with different threshold. We try to set it, and eventually when we found when let's say we have at least 9 bushfire air masses interception for the during the transportation of the air masses, we get the highest R squared, the correlation. So we use this one to define, okay, for the air masses, at least it need to have 9 interception with the bushfire during the transportation. And for this, we define these air masses has been contaminated by the bushfire. So based on our method, we look back into the data in the past 16 years. And the top one shows you the frequency, how frequent we have these how frequent we receive the air masses contaminated by bushfire. The gray one, that is in the non-bushfire season. The red one shows you the frequency of bushfire influence in bushfire season. You clearly see that during bushfire season, we have a high frequency. We get these contaminated air masses. And the middle panel shows you the mean firepower of these fire hotspots, how strong they are. And the bottom one shows you where are these fires from. And the gray one, that means the fire are in Queensland. And the green one means the fire are in New South Wales. And we also have fire. They are transported from other territory, other states. But what I want to say here is during bushfire season, majority are in Queensland. Non-bushfire season, they are transported from New South Wales. And the next question what we want to answer, is, okay, you see, wow, we have a lot of transported bushfire, a lot of air masses, considerable air masses contaminated by bushfire. But what is the contribution from the bushfire to our air quality, to the air pollutant? We still have our normal life. We are not locked in the room. We are not doing any work. Even the bushfire is in somewhere very, very far away. So what we are going to do is we try to estimated the contribution of bushfire emission on the PM 2.5 and the ozone value. So imagine on a day we don't have bushfire influence. You still have traffic, you still have industrial activity. Humans are still working, we still have our normal life. On a day you have bushfire influence, you still have our traffic, you still have industrial activity, but you also have contribution from the bushfire. So in this case, we use the machine learning model to train the data on non-bushfire influence day. Okay, here we read the procedure, how we do that. So we account for the local meteorology, the temperature, related humidity, solar irradiation. We also look into where are the air masses from, where they have been spent on the land, on the sea, or in the really high free troposphere, high atmosphere, because that might have less influence with the bushfire happening on the ground. We also look into the water vapor, and then we look into how far they are, point-to-point distance, and then the direction. And for the human activity, we use just hour of day, a day of week, day of year, try to account for rush hour, account for weekday, weekend. And we use this one to train the data on the non-bushfire influence day. And then what we do is we form counterfactual cases, means on a day you have bushfire influence. What if there are no bushfire? You still have this human activity. And then we can have a counterfactual cases, and then we have our observation, we subtract it. And in that case, we can get the PM 2.5 concentration or the ozone concentration contributed by the fire. And by doing this, we can estimate what is the contribution on the bushfire impact on daily average PM 2.5 and ozone concentration in the bushfire season per year. And with these two figures, the two main messages is for the bushfire, we get at least 10% of the contribution to the PM 2.5, we receive it. For the ozone, quite stable, I would say on average 5%, but less than 10%. The maximum we get is 10%. For the PM2.5, we get really high, can even up to 40%. So for the next stage, what we are going to do is, yes, we are still waiting for the Medicare data set. Once we receive it, we are going to map with this data and look into what is the impact on the primary care, what's the burden on the primary care health system. In addition to this work, we also have a couple of research assistants working on. We try to map what is the PM2.5 concentration during bushfire season across the whole Queensland. Because what if, people might ask the question, what if you live in far north in Queensland? There's no air quality station. What's the information? How safe we are during bushfire season? We are working on that one. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for everyone. Thank you for having me here. Feel free to ask questions.
Let's go back to your slide, please.
Yes.
2011, 2012 was a very wet year.
Okay.
2019 was a very dry year, and yet both have a big wildfire impact.
That one, I haven't been here for that long, so I don't know. It's a wet or dry. It's all based on the data statistic. We calculated. We are sure there could be some uncertainty, and for this wet or dry, I don't know too much. But when I talk to people from Bushfire Heritage, they talk. They're not talking about which year, but they say, yeah, every day we need to burn. I was surprised to hear the fact that one year they say somewhere in Queensland, the burn area is half size of New South Wales. Well, I'm a bit surprised, but I can talk more about. I can ask them more if wet or dry that will impact on these bushfire emission. But I have to say that here the bushfire is what detected by satellite. They tell me the fact that the satellite may not be that accurate because now they have control burning. What control burning emitted is the steam, but not smoke. That may not be identified by the satellite.
Yeah, some of the satellite picks up the heat source, not the site.
Yeah.
Are you aware of the Fire North site or the maps?
Sorry.
The site they call North Australian Fire Indicator, but it's called NAAFI or the Fire North site, and it monitors all bushfires in northern Australia.
Okay, good to know. Good to know.
Yeah, and DETSI does a lot of that fire spot mapping. But I've got a couple of questions. Which are you looking at the specific chemical profile of bushfire smoke?
This is a good question. For the air, I also do a lot of laboratory work, burning the tree, the leaves. For the I would say for the air quality network, you can't do that one. You can't look into specific species because this work is rely on huge amount of data, and that is effort. The lack of people, lack of money, we can't do that one. But in the lab, we can do that. We burn, we have control system, 1 cubic meter glass chamber, and then we burn it small amount. Every time we only burn 4 grams of leaves. And we look into how these emission, during transportation, we look into the chemistry, how they modify the toxicity of the smoke toxical properties. And then we have a system we can measure, we call reacted oxygen species. And then we quantify how high is that one. And then we look into the signal.
My second question, if I can, is what I can't quite understand what scale you're operating at. And the reason I say that, for anyone that's lived in southeast Queensland, we know we have this massive airship that moves up the valleys and comes back down. And when we have a bushfire season, was 2019 when Peterborough went up?
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a horrific year. The whole of southeast Queensland was, in fact, much of eastern Australia was thick with bushfire smoke, and I would have expected a much more significant indication. I mean, it was massive amount for a prolonged period.
Well, lighting was even more interesting because of the enormous stream mortality. And I remember the Coburn fires, because all you could see was dead trees in the background. So it was this huge fuel load just sitting there waiting for the initiation.
So, so you're working at a national, I mean, you're dividing it by sort of by state, but are you looking, I don't quite understand.
Is it the impact on Brisbane?
Impact on Brisbane. Impact on Brisbane.
That seemed to correlate to me, and there are other times because we get that both that airshed move and DETSI does that modelling, as you're probably aware, the modelling of the movement of air through southeast Queensland.
I think that might be born.
Sorry?
That might be born Bureau of Meteorology.
No.
No, I'm pretty sure that's Dave Wainwright's team.
Yeah. We both know who.
We know the guy.
Okay, who is?
Managed the team.
So the one we talked to is Don New from yeah, Don. We talked to Don New. Yeah.
It's also that we get these inversion layers where the whole area just gets sort of stagnant. With, with a whole layer of smoke. So it just doesn't somehow quite gel. But anyway, other questions.
Which brings to the question I had is are all 2.5 particles of equal merit in terms of causing problems to humans?
Okay.
Or is it just particular, of course we all know the asbestos fibre has its own special properties that causes it to be a problem. But in the fire, I'm fascinated by your work of burning different materials and looking at the chemistry of it, and whether, I presume you're then looking at the kind of 2.5 particles that are produced by different levels of heat of burn and so on. And that, that's fascinating work to, as far as I can see, to try and unravel this, because the inversion layer thing is going to keep hitting us, and not just in Delhi and in Beijing. It's going to have it here, of course, but not quite as bad. But it's what is that composition of 2.5 particles that are the most dangerous, or is it all of them?
Well, you may be aware that one of the natural sources of dioxins and furans is from bush.
Yeah.
So they're part of the group of their chemicals, and that's one of the natural ways we can expose to.
Are you doing HPLC, GCMS and so on this material? I know Lydia, and she's got capacity.
This is if so, depends on what we really want to do, and there's two method we are for in general, yes, we want to know which component, but this is I think you need to first identify, this is called qualitative. You need to know which one, but somehow the composition, the structure is hard to know. And if we can do quantitative measurement, and then we know which compound, quantitative, and then we get to we know how much, what is the dose response, great. I think is in general go into making, we can link to the DETSI is if we know how much PM 2.5 coming from bushfire, that will be is already a big step.
Oh, no, I'm not decrying the work at all. I'm
No,
saying
no.
I'm happy that group.
But somehow we need to link with the really big air quality network, what they can do. If you
Run the team is that it's kind of swamped by the massive impact of 2.5 in general on your lungs. That the impact of PM 2.5 pieces of any level of toxicity is so significant that it sort of swamps.
So it's a generalised size-related
Size
initiation of
Initiation
immune
of
response or
damage.
an allergic
Yeah.
response.
Oh, no, more damage, like specific damage to the
Okay.
Yeah.
So just to move on from that, basically, have you got any preliminary feedback from the medical system regarding the nature of the emphysema or lung damage or whatever it might be that could be linked to this sort of level? Have you got any feedback yet?
we do have collaborator from is it QMIR? Yeah, we do have from the team from Professor called Anthony White. We do collaborate that, and then they collect the sample. It's not online measurement. What we love to do is online measurement, means real time. But what do? Is they come to our lab, collect the sample, the smoke, dissolve in liquid, and then put on the cell they're working on, then look into the responses. They might have some human cell they can look into, but I don't know what they are working on. We might have a next discussion at the early of next year. Yeah. But what is hard is different two-story is where we are sitting here, we might get diluted chemical different smoke compared to the one what people expose in the burning field. Yeah, that might be different.
Just a general comment that the Nobel laureate Stephen Chu, who was the secretary for health, I believe, in one of the United States governments, found that 2.5 concentration was so serious that it was the equivalent in some of the air pollution that they had in the Sydney Newcastle cigarette smoke. It's the equivalent of making a month-old baby smoking a packet of cigarettes a day.
So which city was that?
It was based probably on New York, but basically over the whole of America, little cities.
Absolutely, I totally agree.
This data is really related to the fire season in southeast Queensland.
Yes.
Keep in mind that as you go further north across the savannas,
Mm-hmm.
they virtually burn 50% every year.
Yeah.
It's just like a big smoke pit. Fly across. There's fires everywhere.
I think it's a difficulty for that. Or maybe another department. They organize the air quality station there. What I have mentioned in the talk is, yes, we do have some side work, and then we base on the data in where we collect it at the air quality network, and then link with the satellite data, and then we try to map to the funnel. That's what we try to do. And I think to operate a station in Australia, especially in the tropical region, is super hard. That is something I experienced on Great Barrier Reef, super hot, and then a lot of humidity in your line. You need to drive it. And our satellite work is we try to identify if there are any hot spot, so high concentration of PM 2.5 during bushfire season. If later on, DESI agree and then say, okay, looks like it's the case, they might can build some preliminary station and then see what happens. Yeah.
Do you have any information on the incidence of this in relation to the fires that they used to have when they burn sugarcane prior to harvest? But these days they tend to harvest with sugarcane rather than burn beforehand.
This one I haven't thought about thought about it.
They were very significant impact, and that's why there was so much effort to try to get farmers to start trash cane blanketing instead of burning. But they originally started burning, interesting story, they originally started burning because they farm workers would get leptospirosis, which kills you, from the urine of the rats in the cane when they used to hand cut. So they needed to burn then for a health purpose, and then they didn't need to do it afterwards once they were doing it with machines. They continued to do it because I have to say cane farmers are a bit prone to doing what Granddad did and not changing what they do. Particularly famous.
Well, this is fascinating work.
Thank you.
And the group we're working with, it's always fascinating to hear of what they're doing.
Thank you.
So we,
Do pass on our congratulations to
and we
Lydia
look
for her
forward
latest goal.
very much to what you're doing in more detail. We look forward to the outcomes of this research.
Yeah.
And I think the take-home message, we've got someone from the medical profession here already today, is to say, look, this is a public health issue that should really be addressed, because we know that it is, from the evidence James has said about smoking a baby smoking a pack of cigarettes is equivalent to what we're all inhaling is pretty grim.
So we actually put a solution for an MRO in 2019, bushfires were raging, to look at the association between bushfires and admissions to intensive care units and their patients' outcomes. And we were not funded because it was apparently not of significant importance to the government. But I think the work the collaborators you work with to look at cellular effects in vitro of the particles is important to understand. I suspect if you're going to look for public health impact, you probably need to look broader than for our presentations to primary care, because you won't see those necessarily on the bushfire day. Primary care presentations will happen maybe a week later, because people can't get into GPs predominantly. What's going to be, and having worked in ICU during the thunderstorm asthma issues in Melbourne and bushfires in South Australia, you're going to see an increase in presentations to emergency departments and looking at rates of hospitalisation and looking at admissions to intensive care units, probably showing you a more acute effect of what's happening in relation to the bushfire. And that data is not based in Medicare, some of it is, but for example, if you want to look at ICU admissions, you need to speak to the Australian New Zealand Intensive Care Society, because they have a database of all of that information going back to the year 2000.
Is that made available?
If you work with an intensivist and you put together a package and put in an application, it's readily available. Biggest delay is usually filling in the paper. But if you do it, the team will turn around and it's approved. The approval takes about 72 hours, and then the data will be sent to you within 24 hours. Yeah, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, I think it was hard to get that sort of data, so that's interesting to know.
So this is a safety and quality database maintained by ANSICS that we use ICU benchmark, and then so it's a benchmark tool that we then can use that data for research purposes. In fact, pretty much any big study related to intensive care medicine in Australia, before we progress to a clinical trial, we will test some of our hypotheses with retrospective analysis of the data to see if there's a signal to progress.
Good to know. Good to know. What your comment about the impact on the primary healthcare system? Absolutely right. And in the model, we need to account for the time lag effect. So we have an arbitrary number and then look into.
I would I would look out, I would look beyond under sort of 2 weeks to a month after the event, because people, again, people who are severely ill will present to emergency departments, but people who go to primary care will be going because my asthma's flared up. I had a bit more chest pain this week. So you may find that if there is a bump in primary care presentations, is days to weeks later when people's symptoms and when they get into their general practitioner.
But I think you've just put forward a role that I can see the whole society undertaking in the resilience glory. That is melding these public health and brilliant data set from your work and the group's work, which are apparently, but you know, the COVID brought them together a lot more. And I would have thought that we should be able to advocate for this kind of a broader data set collaboration between groups we know of through you and groups that we know of in ICUs and groups that we know of from the government. And
you're talking about a whole system approach.
that's our forte. And we really are not somehow we've got to get that message across to people in government so that they look more favourably upon that as a way to get better integration across systems.
In a general comment, I think we're starting to understand now that the Australian landscape was formed very much by fire. There's a good argument we should be burning a lot more to restore the landscape to its traditional form, whatever we choose to do that. So I think if this continues, we'll see more fires, but they'll be possibly prescribed killer fires rather than wildfires. What indication does that have? The different fires produced, should we look at which fires produced?
Well, I think that one, I base my understanding is for my approach here, I think it's hard to generate that mass which tide generate more, because the meteorology also may have a impact as well. And what I'm saying here is the interception with the fire. You might have different type of landscape type. And what we are doing alongside this work is we look into individual fire, but of course those fire impacting on the air quality of Brisbane. We look into this fire and then what's the landscape type. And most of them, yes, savanna burning. I talked to the student and then he is more doing fire ecology. He told me, yeah, for this cattle farming, there's two different type of management. Some is scientific driven. Another one is a empirical experience. And then we don't know how to identify what is the management type for the farming. That might be the next thing we need to work on. If anyone knows where we can contact, where is the data set, that would be great. That will be helpful. Yeah. And going back to the big picture you're talking about, I think is another dimension we can look into is how the air pollution affect the performance of athletes.
That's a nice one.
For the upcoming
Australian audiences, we're all so gung-ho about athletics and so on, and sports people in general, then that might resonate with that we can get a grant to look at that, and in the meantime get some real science done.
Because what I regularly do play tennis, and I know how tough to play here because it's extremely hot. and sometimes it's humid. And if you have, because the climate extreme event is, we have more and more climate extreme event. For this bushfire, when you have bushfire, you might have hot day, and then you have compound effect, extremely hot, and then you have bushfire, and two on top with each other. That might be extremely difficult for sports athlete.
Well,
I have their game outside.
Yeah, I see you did. But the Olympics is the call now. I mean, one has to relate that public performance of athletes and sports people in general to the fact that we've got this grand thing happening here in Brisbane. I mean, the current government might actually listen to that. We don't know, but we should try.
I think that would be an excellent leader to basically get some action on it.
And nationally,
Yeah.
yeah, because it's Australia, not just Brisbane.
And he's talking about the national religion.
Well, yes, well, we should be able to see whether we can get some traction.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to working with QUT
Yeah.
for your program.
Yeah, hopefully
and with the
we can continue.
existing programs. And just mention that to the group that we very much enjoyed and will enjoy the linkage into the future.
Okay, thanks a lot of comment, more than the one I get from other stakeholders. They're more doing a fire thing.
Let's take the opportunity to follow up.
Yeah, indeed.
So,
Yeah, indeed.
please, thank you.